Hey guys, I'm super excited to introduce to you Dr. Keesha. So welcome, Dr. Keesha. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thanks for having me. I have a PhD in sexology. I'm a nurse practitioner, and I'm also board certified in functional medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, and then am trained in five different modalities for trauma healing, so psychotherapy also, as well as energy work and yoga and meditation teaching.
So, how long have you personally been doing intermittent fasting and what made you decide to start it?
I went up on a mountain in Colorado with the Lakota Sioux Native American to do a vision quest with them about 3 years ago for the first time. And in that process, you don't eat and you don't drink for 4 days and 4 nights. And when I came back and talked a little bit about it, some of my functional medicine colleagues were really upset about me talking about it and saying, I remember particularly Dr. Alan Christensen responding on my Facebook page, this is dangerous. Why are you talking about it? And saying, actually Muslims have been doing this for centuries for Ramadan. It's a spiritual doorway into being able to have your body become lighter and your digestive system being able to be quiet so that you can actually get more in touch with spirit. And it was the most remarkable experience. I've worked with plant medicines and a lot of other things spiritually. And not intermittent, but dry fasting, for those 4 days actually got me to that place. But it was in the supportive community of this tribe with prayer and and their own fasting and drumming, that was going on down below. And so I came home and I said, the reason for doing this was not weight loss, it was for spirituality. And I wouldn't try this at home, So I was really careful to say it's very supported with this community. And then I've done that a couple of other times since, and I always have the most remarkable experience. And so I went in through the portal of, rather than autophagy or looking at weight loss or looking at the bodily function, more of a spiritual path. And then had that experience and then started studying it as things were starting to come out and the research, from the medical perspective. So it's sort of an interesting doorway that I entered through.
So, when you were doing the 4 days of an extended fast, were you doing it dry where you didn't have water either?
Yeah. Which again, I would say don't try that at home, because this was done in the support of a community, right? That was actually more focused on a visions it was a rite of passage. So there was a whole different purpose to it. So it made it feel different than fasting that I do on a regular basis.
Awesome. So let's talk about that dry fasting for just a second, because that has really started to get more and more popular. And so for people who don't know what dry fasting is, explain it and talk about what is the benefits that dry fasting gives you versus doing a water fast.
Well, dry fasting is as it sounds. You're not having any liquids in addition to no food. And the benefits of it, the way that I explain fasting to my patients is I'm sitting in my office and I say, if my office manager walks to the door repeatedly, handing me charts and asking me questions and interrupting me for phone calls while I'm talking to you, my patient, then I'm not going to be very efficient. And you're also not going to feel like I'm giving you very much attention. Well, that's exactly, for time immemorial, as far back as we can go, different frameworks of medicine have said that health begins and ends in the digestive system. So what happens when you're fasting is you're actually giving your digestive system a much needed break. So instead of interrupting it constantly with throwing food down there, it can actually do its other job. So the body is this most amazing, miraculous feat of engineering. And we keep interrupting one of the most important jobs that it has, which is digestion, by just like letting it, constantly interrupting it. And So what fasting does is it allows for that rest to happen so that all of the other, like the garbage man can come, the lymphatic system, and take the little garbage sacks away that the cells put on the outside of the membrane at night. But if you've actually put food in at night, then it can't get anywhere. The streets are blocked and the little garbage trucks can't get around. And then if you are putting food down there, then the liver, which is supposed to actually do its clearing, between 2 and 3 in the morning, also is consumed with having to deal with actual food that just got put down there rather than clearing out and doing some of the deep cleaning that's supposed to happen in the middle of the night for you. So dry fasting allows for everybody to have a break and do that. We do this in our houses. We like to, at least I do. I like to just like dive in and scrub and deep clean every once in a while. I don't do it all the time. And when I do that, I sit back and I just love being in the space. It's so clean and it's so orderly, and I can think and I can function, and every part of me, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically, gets in harmony. Well, that's exactly, Ayurvedic medicine says that we're a microcosm of the macrocosm of our environment. So what's going on outside of us when we feel good, that's actually exactly on a cellular level what's happening too. You can think about dry fasting as the deepest cleaning that you can do.
I love it. And people might not know, but there's kind of something called like a hard fast and kind of a soft fast when it comes to dry fast. And with a hard dry fast, that means that you can't allow any water to touch the body. So that means like you're not washing the dishes, you're not taking a bath, you're not taking a shower, you're not brushing your teeth. But a softer dry fast is where like you can brush your teeth, you can take a shower, you can do all those things, but you're actually not just drinking any water. So when you were there with those 4 days, like were you doing a hard dry fast or a soft dry fast?
When you're in a vision quest, you're in the middle of, well, in my case, I was in the middle of a pine forest. And you're in just a small, kind of enough to lay what you could lay a sleeping bag down in. And then you have prayer flags around you, prayer ties, and that's it. So you're not going anywhere. So there's no water anywhere on you or in you. I suppose if it started raining on you, then it wouldn't be a hard dry fast anymore.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But it's so.
Yeah, I've heard that the dry fast doesn't, obviously fasting's so good for eliminating parasites, but that doing a dry fast helps eliminate parasites even better, and it promotes regeneration of healthy tissues a little bit better. Have you found that to be true?
So I'm going to dive into areas that are never talked about when fasting is brought up, and that is Ayurvedic medicine. So Ayurvedic medicine is the 10,000-year-old sister science of yoga. And it talks about each of us being very different from one another. And that is so accurate. We are different from one another. And there's just absolutely no way that you can have a rule of thumb like that says, if you do this, this will happen. And then this is good for everybody. So the way that you think about it from an Ayurvedic perspective, you and I, actually, fasting is really good for us. Our body type really appreciate having everything taken away for a while and having that break. We have a kapha pitta body type, or a pitta kapha, which means that we have a little bit more water in our tissues anyway, and a lot of fire in us. So that means like very intelligent, very sharp-witted, can be sharp-tongued, can be quite, judgmental on ourselves, and then it can leak out onto other people. And then also very loyal and very warm and very loving, like the best friends and lovers to have are the kapha people. But what's going on in a kapha body is that there's more water already. It's, Ayurvedic medicine is an elemental framework of medicine, which means it's everything that makes up the universe is inside of us. And so for kapha, there's more earth and water. So we already have that deeply in us as it is. So we can actually go like an elephant can without for a long time and be okay. Now, a Vata person, which is made of more air and space, there's those itty little mini that are the life of the party, social butterfly. They bounce around and they flip from one thing to another. They have a hard time sitting still. They can get kind of ADD like, and they are very dry. So if you had somebody do a so-called hard fast, that's a Vata person, they, they're the ones that are running the high risk of fainting, of really not doing well and crashing because their tissues already don't have very much moisture. And the older they get, when we have, these are called doshas, like the body types. We have a dosha specific time of life, of day, of season. And so the Vata time of life, it is menopause and beyond or andropause and beyond. So the closer that somebody gets to menopause or andropause, that's a Vata already, and then they're going into Vata stage of life. And then if it's fall or winter and very dry, then, and you have them do a hard fast like that, they can actually have some fairly serious damage. So it's really wise to know who you are constitutionally and what's good for you rather than what it says on paper.
Awesome. Well, I know you specialize in autoimmune issues, and I want you to talk to us a little bit about what are the autoimmune issues that you're seeing that people are coming to you with the most, and how has fasting helped them?
Mm. So there are over 150 autoimmune diseases now. And people don't often realize that like restless legs is autoimmune and Raynaud's, when you get really cold hands, feet, and your nail beds turn blue is Raynaud's. So the most frequent diseases of an autoimmune nature that I see are going to be like that because people don't even know that they have them. Hashimoto's, I see a lot of rheumatoid arthritis and MS. I see a lot of osteoporosis, which again has been reclassified as autoimmune. I see a lot of gut things like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's and irritable bowel. I see a lot of skin things, eczema and psoriasis, rosacea. All of these things are autoimmune in nature. So, uh, yeah, so many. And all of them actually, depending on the dosha type. So one of the things that Ayurveda talks about is that autoimmune disease is undigested anger. Well, my gosh, that changed my life and my own path. I had rheumatoid arthritis when I was 30 and I was able to reverse it within 6 months. But it was because I found that statement and went, what? I'm not an angry person, and then realized over time that as I was really doing research and figuring out this body, right? And this mind and this heart and this spirit, that, oh, I should feel angry that I had sexual abuse when I was 10 and I've never actually dealt with this and I've never been angry about it. And of course my body has taken it on and has not digested it, right? And so as soon as I was able to start that process of trauma healing and learning how to really digest feelings and emotions the same way that I do food, then I was able to reverse it. So one of the things that intermittent fasting or any kind of fast, actually, water fasting will do in an autoimmune situation is it helps to reduce inflammation. And inflammation is a lot of fluid in the tissues. That's why if you have like a wrist inflammatory problem, it'll get red, it'll get swollen, it'll get angry and inflamed, is because there's a lot of water in there. And so what the fasting does when you're reducing the water also is it helps to reduce that water in the tissue, kind of squeeze it out like a sponge. But the thing that must go with it is the other digestion, right? It's the digestion of emotions and feelings and beliefs at the same time. So had I just done fasting, I wouldn't have gotten anywhere because I tried all kinds of things with food and water and, and adjusting all of these times of intake and everything. But it wasn't until I actually started healing up my beliefs that I put in place from that abuse time. The beliefs that I created was I had to be perfect to even survive, because my vice principal was telling me it was my fault. And so if I fasted perfectly, right? And I had that meaning of I have to be perfect to survive. And then I applied that to fasting and diet and all the other pieces, then I would still be whipping myself and driving myself in this way that didn't involve self-compassion and self-love and healing that needed to happen from these early traumas. And so how I help my patients with this now is to use fasting as a vehicle, not the end game. So fasting is not, as you're fasting with food and drink, you're also fasting with the way that you think about yourself. You're fasting the toxic belief patterns. You're fasting from your negative self-talk. And you start to digest your emotions as your liver is able to digest the toxins in your body because you don't have food going in. It's really like that combination is essential for,
Wow.
for healing autoimmune disease.
Let's just take a minute and let's talk about my latest discovery. Listen, this is the hottest super nutrient packed product that's going to boost your brain and your overall well-being. First of all, as soon as I tried this product, I became a fan of it and was blown away by the immediate result. I felt focused, my mind was clear, it just doubled my mental performance. So this product has the superpowers of mushroom extracts and collagen. So it has 4 of the best health boosting mushrooms. It's got lion's mane, chaga, cordyceps, and reishi, collagen, and Peruvian cacao. So when you combine all of these, the 4 mushrooms and the collagen, it is going to energize your brain and your body. It's called Collagenius. So check it out, nootopia.com/wasteawaygenius, and use the code wasteaway10 during checkout. Well, I love that you said that. And, in my podcast that I do, I have people send in questions. And one of the things I've seen with the questions is people say things like, when I'm fasting, I feel like I'm crying more and I'm a lot more emotional and I'm a lot more sensitive. And one of my friends, Kristen, she has this line that she always says. She's a counselor. And she says, you need to sit with unease to heal your disease. I'll say it again.
So true.
Isn't that good? But you need to sit with unease to heal your disease. And what fasting does, and I love that you brought this point up, because what fasting does, what happens is, because we're running to food all the time, right? It's like, oh, I'm sad. Let me have a cookie. Oh, I'm having a stressful day at work. Let me have a pan of brownies. And so we're just masking it with food. And what happens is, the minute that we start fasting, we start feeling these emotions, and our crutch of trying to mask it is the food. And now all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, I have to sit with this unease. But guess what? When you sit with the unease, that's when you're actually going to heal your disease. And so I love that you talked about that with the trauma.
I used to run an interfaith youth group years ago. And one of the things that I had the teenagers that were in my group do is, when we would go visit, this is how come I know about Ramadan. And when we would go visit the mosque, we actually would adhere to Ramadan with our Muslim friends and go for a month without eating when there's any light, right? And it was remarkable what the kids came away with. It was like, wow, I had no idea I spent so much time thinking about what I'm going to put in my mouth, like food and drink, and it frees you up. I had one teenage girl say, gosh, at the lunch hour, I actually can go and I can meditate instead of eating. And I feel so much better for the rest of my day at school. And they were just so struck by how much time we spend in consuming, thinking about shopping, thinking about eating, thinking about drinking, and our next experience. And it's all about consumption rather than just resting and letting go of things. We just don't have any space in there that we automatically are letting go of things, right? And so that's what fasting is so good for, is it frees up a remarkable number of brain cells, a remarkable number of them,
Yeah.
because you actually have time for being, and this is one of the things, like I did a 10-day Vipassana retreat, which is a silent meditation retreat. And, again, you're not allowed to write in a journal or read a book or be on your phone, or they take your phone. You don't even do yoga or practice energy work. You're just constantly in this space of meditation. And what I said is, it's like 20 years of psychotherapy you never knew you needed, because you're just with you, yourself, and you. There's no break from you. And so then all the stuff gets a chance to come up so you can digest it. And it's beautiful. 20 years of psychotherapy you never knew you needed, and it's just you. You don't have to go anywhere. So it's a really beautiful process to really let go of consumption of all kinds, consuming the news, consuming, whatever it is, right? Just letting go, having space inside of your day every day to let go and not consume.
That is amazing. I will tell you a story. I had a friend of mine, his name's Jim, and he lived on the water and just had this beautiful house. And we were over there, and he had not worked in 3 years. And so I said to him, I was like, can I ask you, because he had sold his business and for like multi millions of dollars. And so he just was like, I don't need to work. And I said, so like, what do you do all day? Like, don't you get bored? Like, what are you doing? He's like, I will tell you, when it first happened, he's like, I was busy. I was at work all the time. He's like, now I've fallen in love with being with myself. He's like, and that is a powerful thing, because if you don't like being with you, that's a problem. Like, you've got to get to the point where you love to be with yourself as well. And not that there's anything wrong with being with other people, but work on yourself to the place where you go, I really enjoy being with myself. And I thought, wow, that is really powerful.
Yeah. It's so powerful. And there's certain, I work with the Enneagram a lot, which is a way of understanding our motivation. And there are 9 different ways our egos speak into the world. And we have like one that's sort of our command center. And I'm a 2 on the Enneagram, which is a caregiver. And the 2s always want to connect with everybody. They don't really like being alone. And over the years, as I've done these things like, 10-day silent retreats and 4-day vision quests on the mountain and things like that, I've done exactly that. And at first I used to have to say to myself, you're all alone and you're okay. You're all alone and you're okay. Like, just that basic, soothing a small child, that going, I'm all alone and I'm not okay, and then I got to this place of, I love being alone, because I'm really not. I'm with the divine, and then I was just like, oh my gosh. And so it is really interesting when you start to learn to fall in love with yourself. I've said it that way too. Because you find it's not necessarily yourself, but it's actually the divine that's inside of you, the spirit part of you. And you realize you haven't ever been alone, never will be alone. And then you get to connect to that part. You can't do that when you're constantly chattering, when you're constantly engaged in like the consumption of everything, right? So I love that story, and it's a really powerful one.
Awesome. Well, we know fasting is great for autoimmune disease and it can really help heal your body. But is there any other tips that you have seen that have really helped your patients? I know you've helped thousands of people help with their autoimmune diseases and their issues and help improve those symptoms. So as far as like their diet and what they are eating when they are in their eating window, and kind of supplements that you've said, these things seem to really help people.
Well, I do a lot of genetic testing. I do genetic testing on every one of my patients. And the reason for that, I do that in combination with a nutritional evaluation and an adrenal and hormone test on everybody. And the reason for that is because if you have adrenal fatigue, actually fasting in the morning is not so great, and going to CrossFit. Like, there are certain ways that your body will say, whoa, 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 I'm already up against the wall and now you're taking away any fuel, I'm actually going to hold on to everything, right? It feels like it's a zebra being chased by a lion and then everything gets put on hold. So I always do these kinds of checks. I always say test, don't guess, because you want to find out who you are and what your body is asking for. And so in terms of supplements, in terms of dietary advice and things like that, I do it based on the data that comes from you individually. And I don't really have a way of saying that every single person should be doing this, because we are very different. It's really know thyself, right?
Yes.
And the way to do that is, to really get in there and see like what's the data. One of the things that again I love about Ayurveda is that it does say that we're each different. And so in that case, then we want to know, how to communicate with the body. And it gives us all these ways of communication, like watching what your bowel movements look like, looking at your tongue. In my book, Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle, I have these diagrams of your tongue and what a healthy tongue looks like, as opposed to if this is going on with your tongue, this is what could be happening.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about those two things. Let's talk about your tongue. And here, you want to look at mine?
Yeah. Get in there. Get it close to the camera. Here, let me see. And talk at the same time because then the picture gets made. There we go.
Again.
So you've got on the back of your tongue, you have a whitish coating.
Okay.
When your tongue is supposed to look pink with just saliva.
Okay.
And so as you look at the back of your tongue, the very back of your tongue is actually the digestive area. And again, that's what we're talking about is digestion, right? And so putting ice in your drinks will shut down what we call Agni or your digestive fire. And I know you live in Florida, right?
No, I live in Virginia Beach, but I'm drinking ice water right now.
Yeah, so a lot of people that live in warm areas will put ice in their drinks because they're used to having to cool off, right? And that actually will kill your digestive fire. So that's just like one thing that you don't want to put ice in your drink. You don't want to put ice in your smoothies. You want to make sure that in the Vata time when everything is getting cold, that you actually are warming it up. So warm, soupy food, slightly cooked vegetables, or like I juice vegetables every morning, and no matter what time of year. But in the wintertime, at this time when it's cold outside, I'll put a big chunk of ginger in my juicer too. And then that warms it up, right? That's really digestive fire enhancing. And so those are the kinds of things like sipping a little bit of warm lemon water before you eat instead of having ice will help with that. Scraping your tongue. So you're doing things that are digestive enhancing. Okay.
Got it. Wow. And so you said, what about your nails? Like what would your nails give us some examples of how your nails would talk to you about your health?
So see my thumb there, you can see that white moon, half moon there at the cuticle. That actually means that I have good stomach acid. And so that's another one that's Agni, it's your digestive fire, right? If you don't have any half moons on your nails, then that's one sign of having low digestive fire. If you have vertical ridges, then it means you're not absorbing very well in your colon. If your nails are splintering and flaking and breaking all the time and brittle, that means something. If there are white spots on it, it means something with you. So the nails ought to be smooth and have those little half moons and no spots.
Awesome. Well, can we give that to the listeners as a gift, maybe a free guide to the nails and the tongue of what that would say?
Actually, I'll give them, I have a face map about what your wrinkles say about you too.
Oh, okay.
So Ayurveda does all kinds of ways of communicating with you, right? And so on your face, like if I had a line right here, so I've never had Botox. That's another thing. When you have Botox, it's hard to
tell.
It's hard to do this, right? So if I had a line here, that would mean my liver needs to have a detox. If I had really deep lines around here, it would mean that I'm not absorbing very well. Let's see. if you have dark circles, like I don't have any makeup on except for my eyes and a little bit of lip gloss. So this is no foundation or anything. If I had deep dark circles here, it could mean that my kidneys are having a hard time, or my adrenals are tired, or that I've got some food sensitivity that I'm not paying attention to. You want to be able, like, your skin ought to be something that you consider another breathing part of your body that has to get rid of things and it has to bring in nourishment. It's the largest organ of detoxification that you have. So you want to make sure that what you put on it, you can eat. So like for moisturizer, I just use oil, sesame oil, because that I could cook my food in, it's the same kind, organic cold pressed sesame oil. And I put some essential oils in it so I don't smell like a Chinese wok. But but that's all that's on my face for moisturizer and on my skin. So you want to always just like pay attention to your skin and it's giving you feedback, right? Just like pain in your body is giving you feedback. Anything you get constipated, it's giving you feedback. You want to have a bowel movement that looks like a brown banana once or twice a day, and you're in and out of the bathroom, easy to clean up after. You're not sitting in there reading a book. So that's actually what good digestion looks like. You're emptying your trash, right? A couple times a day so things can't build up and start to steam.
Well, speaking of emptying your trash, is there any tips that you can give that will help? Because I think because I've talked about it so much, because I am always constipated. It's something I've always struggled with. And so we get a lot of questions in about that because I think I've shared that several times. So talk about that, because with fasting, is that going to, like, once you start eating again, let's say you did an extended fast of 2 days. After you got off that 2-day fast, once you ate again, is that going to help things moving along, or what is your opinion?
Well, there are two answers, and I want to bookmark one of them so that we come back to it, and that is constipation itself. Mm-hmm. So, but the answer or the question you just asked is different, which is, this is really important. So this is another thing I learned in Ayurveda, and we don't ever talk about this either. And that is that how you come off your fast is equally, if not more important, in how you did your fast. So you go from, if you're dry fasting, then you go to water, and then from water, you would go to some kind of clear broth. And from clear broth, you move into, you can have like juice vegetables or a smoothie, right? And then soup. So you're always moving in this way that's waking up your digestion. You don't go, okay, cool, I had 2 days of fasting, I'm going to go have a burger and fries, right? And it's like your body's going to have whiplash. What the heck just happened here, And so you always want to make sure that you're lovingly reintroducing food. The way that I think about this is if a dog bites you, you don't just go right up to dogs later and be like, hey, baby, like people are pretty scared of dogs once they've had a dog bite. And they want to know, like, is this dog safe, right? And they approach it carefully. And that's the way that, you want to think about your food, is you don't want to eliminate a bunch of meat, like keto and paleo are all the rage. And a lot of times people will interpret that as lots and lots of meat. And so then they'll go from a fast to a lot of meat. And that's really bad for your body. And actually, it has just taken away the good things about your fast. So because your body is having to work extra hard now after what you just did to it. So it's really important that you gradually ease off of your fast. Then you're not going to be constipated. So, but if you throw meat down there on top of it after a fast, you will be constipated. It's going to be like a boa constrictor with a rat in the middle of it. It's going to sit there for a while. So the question about constipation is, there are a couple of things. One is if you have, like I had mentioned earlier, these, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, these constitutional types. If you have a Vata imbalance, one of the most common signs of a Vata imbalance is constipation. And with constipation, everything's dry and it's not moving. Now, the thing about moving waste out of your body, the action, the muscular action that is required for that is called peristalsis. And you don't have peristalsis if you're in fight or flight all the time. And a lot of times, type A people that are PETA and high achiever productivity types are in fight or flight all the time and they don't realize it. And so what I always say is, if you are type A, you shut down your peristalsis. The other thing is you have a lot of emotional stuff that you haven't dealt with over the course of a lifetime. Sometimes people will say, I've had this since childhood. Like, this is just how I am. Then it's usually because they haven't, like, literally constipation is holding onto your shit. So you can think about that emotionally too, right? It's like, what are you holding on to? And so I approach it from all these different directions when I'm treating someone's constipation, as well as who's living in there. Do you have bugs? That's what everyone wants to think. Like, oh, I have parasites, therefore, and they'll treat them and treat them and treat them, and then they're still constipated. So that's one element, right? We go from the gross to the subtle. So the gross would be like, who's living in there? What's going on? What are you putting down there? Does your digestive system work? And then back it out to more and more subtle. Then more and more subtle will get out there to, okay, so what are you not processing? What are you not digesting in terms of emotions, beliefs, feelings, etc.
Awesome. And last question, you were talking about in your hands about having that little half moon because of low stomach acid. What is your opinion on like taking a supplement like HCl, which increases your stomach acid, if you don't have that half moon? Are you a fan of that or not?
Well, and my answer is the same. Everyone's different. And so what I teach my health coaches to do, I teach the Integrative Medicine health coaching program at Academy for Integrative Medicine. And one of the things I do is I teach them right away about stomach acid and how to help their clients. And we have this thing, it's called a stomach acid challenge test. And I'm happy to give that handout as a gift. So what you do is you take, in my store, we have some betaine and pepsin. And I have people take one of those capsules with their next meal. And then I have them check in, like really sit still and listen to your body. Does it have heartburn? Is it upset with this? And there'll be a variety of ways it'll show it's upset. You'll get atypical things for you, like heartburn or stomach pain or digestive stuff. And, it'll be like acidic, right? Maybe gastroesophageal reflux. And so then I'll say, okay, so now stir some baking soda in water and just drink that. It will neutralize it. You don't need stomach acid. That's not the issue. If you don't get heartburn and you take that capsule and you don't feel anything, then with the next meal, you take 2 of those. And if you don't get heartburn, the next meal you take 3, and the next meal 4. You max at 5 per meal. You don't keep going up and up and up. And you just stay there. 5 every meal if you're not getting any kind of heartburn or change. When I first did this, I took 5 per meal for months. I was so chronically low in stomach acid. And this is something that happens as you age anyway. As you get older, your stomach acid naturally decreases. It puts you at higher risk for all kinds of bad bugs like Helicobacter pylori. And so stomach acid is essential for so many different functions in your body, not just breaking down your food, but it's also a protective immune response too. So if you keep going at 5 per meal, it means you have been really low in stomach acid for a really long time. Now, eventually, I was able to cut back to 4, and I stayed at 4 for a really long time, and then down to 3. And some of this is genetic. My dad is on Prilosec. Okay, so that's a proton pump inhibitor. That's one of the most commonly prescribed pharmaceuticals out there. And the the pharmaceutical industry makes so much money on proton pump inhibitors, saying to people, you're low in stomach acid because you're having regurgitation. And one of the things I had to explain to my dad was, no, actually, that means you're low in stomach acid. And because when you throw food down there, you're low in stomach acid, your body's having to overproduce to deal with the food you're putting in there. And so now you're getting this reflux. And so what we had to do is what I do with my patients is say, okay, so I need you to bridge, and we're going to use betaine and pepsin. And sure enough, he was able to come off of his Prilosec. He didn't have an overabundance of stomach acid. He was deficient in it the whole time. So it's just a whole different paradigm and way of thinking about things than, matching the pill to the ill with this sort of, oh, if I'm having reflux, it means I'm having too much acid. That's usually not really the case.
Yeah, I know and that is just such a great point to make, because it's like, hello, having good stomach acid is really good for you. So it's
Essential.
it's absolutely essential. So talk a little bit, because if people are listening out there and they are dealing with, low stomach acid, they might be having gas or bloating or acid reflux or constipation or diarrhea or malabsorption, or they might have nutrient deficiencies, like you said, that you can see on your nails. So what is the difference between someone taking betaine HCl versus just like a digestive enzyme?
The digestive enzyme, that's a really good question, is actually helping your pancreas, because your pancreas produces enzymes for you to break down your food. So when you take a digestive enzyme, you're dealing with a different part of your digestive tract, not stomach acid.
Acid. So it's crucial.
They're different. Yeah. And you may not need, see, here's the thing. I don't need digestive enzymes, and I no longer need any betaine and pepsin. So when I said I do a nutritional test on everyone, it's a test that actually looks to see, are you making enough pancreatic enzymes? Who's living in your gut? Are you absorbing the vitamins and minerals that you're taking in, either in supplement form or in your food? How well are you breaking down your carbohydrates, your proteins, and your fats, and then using them? And do you have heavy metals on board? So I like doing this test yearly for everybody because it's a good check under the hood. I find it far more powerful and useful than a general physical.
Yeah,
The things that we get yearly.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, this actually pops the hood and looks at all your engines, right? And so that's what I like to see is, so do you need a digestive enzyme? Not everybody does.
Awesome.
You can make your organs and glands lazy if you hand things down there that it doesn't actually need. It makes your body not want to produce its own because it can do the backstroke. It doesn't need it.
I love that. Great analogies. Well, it's always a pleasure having you on our show. Tell listeners where they can find out more about you.
Oh, thanks, Chantel. So I'm at drkeesha.com, drkeesha.com.
Awesome. Well, you are just so smart. Just every time I always learn something new. Thanks so much for joining us and being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.